Welcome. You're watching the NWR Mining Resources series. On the line, we have Andromeda Metals. Andromeda Metals is a fast-growing South Australian company with a vision to supply the world with superior quality industrial minerals. On the line with us today, we have James Marsh, who is Andromeda Metals Managing Director. If you have any questions throughout James's presentation, please feel free to drop them in the chat function. Over to you, James.
Yeah, thanks for that introduction, and hello everyone. Welcome to Andromeda. As you heard there, we are an emerging industrial minerals producer, but we also have a number of other value chains, which makes us more interesting than the average industrial minerals player. Sorry, my slide. Hiccup with my slide here, sorry. Next slide is, here we have a corporate overview. So at the moment, we are market cap sitting around about 360 million. We've got a lot of money in the bank and no debt. So a very strong position there. You can see the board member makeup. We have a board now of very experienced individuals who have been selected especially for our company structure and our aims and goals. Chairman Rod Grievous, he's a geologist, has been MD of ASX listed companies. Myself, I've got 32 years of experience in the kaolin industry, worked for two of the biggest industrial minerals companies in the world. Joe Ranford, Operations Director, very experienced a mining engineer who's dealt with a number of companies in South Australia. And importantly, he's been involved in approval process for mines in South Australia. Andrew Shearer, another geologist who's a resource analyst. And we recently added Melissa Holzberger to our board. And she's a very experienced lawyer who specialized in mining companies, including BHP and Rio Tinto. So a very useful addition to us as we grow. There's a graph there to show our share price over the last year or so. We are following a typical curve for a mining company that's has a mining project going into operation. So there's been a bit of a dip recently, but that's not unusual for a pre-operational phase for a mining company. So our core assets, we are focused on our kaolin and halloysite kaolin project, which consists of a Great White project, which is a joint venture with Minotaur Exploration, currently sitting at 75% Andromeda. We also have two other kaolin projects and halloysite kaolin projects in South Australia, which are both 100% owned. That's Mount Hope and Air Kaolin. In total there, we have well over 100 million tons of this halloysite kaolin mineral. So a very large JORC resource. And if you want to look at details of that, we've added some slides at the end which give you all the JORC tables for those resources. We also have a joint venture with Minotaur, which is a 50-50 joint venture for natural nanotech. This is a company that's been set up to capture intellectual property from research and development we're doing into nanotechnologies based on the halloysite kaolin. So the Great White project, this is where it sits. It's in South Australia on the Eyre Peninsula. Operations are scheduled to start in 2022, so next year. So it's just around the corner now. We have some legally binding offtakes in place already, which are sufficient to underpin the whole business. So a very large amount financially of legally binding offtakes there. Current demand actually exceeds our initial planned production, which is interesting. So we could actually sign up right now for whole production for the first year, but we're making sure we are de-risking this as much as possible, and we can use a bit of commercial pressure to get the best prices and the best deals because our material is so highly valued in the market. We're located very close to some essential infrastructure, which is very important for an industrial mineral. We've got a number of ports nearby, which means we can get it to market and still make very good money. We've also got attached to this project in the company, we have a potentially high value concrete industry opportunity, which I'll expand on shortly. We have a de-risked high purity alumina project we're running, and we have a number of nanotechnology opportunities. So a lot more than just the core business. So just a bit more focus on the binding offtakes, which is a very important subject. So we have two main products we're planning to produce from the mine when we start operations next year. We have a ceramic product, which is a high-grade premium product, which is going to be targeted for the porcelain industry. So this is a very high end of the porcelain market, or the ceramics market. This is an area where global supplies are dwindling of this material, but it's still a growing market. So we signed up initial offtake with a Japanese company for a very high price. And this is for $700 a ton, which is very high price for a kaolin. And that's really because we have the halloysite dimension to this product, which adds a lot more value to it. We also have a paint product. So the two main products are ceramics and paint. The paint product, again, is a very high grade, premium grade product for paint. In paint, the halloysite angle is not so important, but we need to have very high brightness, very high purity. And we have both those, and no problems with that. And we have an offtake agreement in place there for 70,000 tons a year, which is a very large contract for premium grade into China. That price is much higher than the $700 a ton. And there are significant global opportunities for that material. So that's our core business, which underpins the whole thing. Also coming through in the background, we have been working on a new product for concrete. We call this Halloysite rheology modifier. We have filed a patent for this. It's a new product, a new application for this material. No one else has done it before for this particular concrete, these concrete benefits. So at the moment, what we're seeing is some very interesting benefits. And by changing the rheology and optimizing the rheology, it can allow all sorts of interesting optimizations, as in higher strength, reducing the carbon footprint, better handling, and better safety. So all very desirable benefits there. Now we're seeing these repeatable in multiple tests. We now moved through to the commercial testing phase of this, and we have some very large commercial companies who are interested in this material. And we are, in fact, at the moment, drilling bulk samples of this. So ton amounts of this material are being taken out of the ground to progress that testing through to commercial agreements. The key for making this product work is it only needs about 1 kilo in 3 tons of concrete, 1 cube of concrete. So very low dosage, which means we can get a high price for this material. It won't affect the overall price of concrete much at all, but it gives a whole lot of very interesting and desirable benefits, especially now with the big push around the world to reduce carbon footprint. So here we have a huge potential global market, but also some very interesting domestic opportunities as well. And we have passed the concrete standards already for this material, has gone through those. So it's fit for purpose, fit for use. As soon as we have it commercially approved by an offtake partner, and we have a resource of the material, then this can move ahead quickly. On the nanotechnology side of things, this is where the research and development is being carried out. So ourselves and Mentor are spending over 1 million tons a year on this research because there's such exciting opportunities behind this. This research is focused on the halloysite part of the kaolin. This is the natural nanotubes that we have in the ground. Having natural nanotubes gives us a huge head start on all sorts of other alternative technologies. So at the moment, we are looking at a number of projects and progressing those as quickly as possible towards commercialization. We have patents filed. Patents have been filed in the area of carbon capture, storage, and conversion to fuel in batteries and supercapacitors and water purification. We're currently working on a second suite of patents, and the other projects which will be covered by that are in agriculture, where we've secured 2.4 million tons of government funding for a project there. We also have medical applications we're working on, hydrogen storage and transport, and remediation of soils. So all in all, there's 12 different projects running. The carbon capture one is moving ahead most quickly at the moment because we are rapidly working towards having a pilot plant working to demonstrate that technology. The good news is that our halloysite kaolin that we have in the Great White Resource is working well in these new opportunities, and that's only at 40% of the halloysite in the halloysite kaolin. So it's going to get better and better as we increase that percentage. And the bulk sampling we're doing right now, we're targeting an area of much higher halloysite concentration. And a new area that we're working on in the background is also in cosmetics, because we found that this material is very desirable for cosmetic approvals. Again, the halloysite is highly desirable here, and that is another huge potential market with a very high value. So a bit more detail on the carbon capture plant. This is becoming a very hot topic with the global warming situation and climate change. And we're getting interest from all sorts of parties now in this technology. So what we're doing is we're building a plant, and you see on the right-hand side there, this is the plant we are building. It's been delayed by COVID, unfortunately, because the main components were coming from India, but they are on the way now, and we're looking for operations in December of this year. That plant will be able to capture large amounts of carbon dioxide and convert it to a fuel, clean fuel, which very importantly closes the whole loop on carbon dioxide. And it's based on Halloysite technology. We produce a matrix from the Halloysite, which has got very high absorbent capability. It goes into this plant, and this plant will cyclically absorb, release, and convert the CO2. So our aim is to get this working and show people that we can capture carbon dioxide either from the air or from exhaust gases for less than $20 a ton, which is a very low number for that process. And if we get that and we succeed in that, then this will be very exciting technology. We also have the high purity alumina project. For those of you who don't know what high purity alumina or HPA is, this is recognized as a key material or mineral for batteries in lithium-ion battery production. It's forecast to grow in demand dramatically, but there was a big shortfall in supply. Now you can make this from kaolin, and importantly for our halloysite kaolin, you can make it much more easily and at much higher purity. I'll give you an example of what we mean is normally you'd need 10 tons of kaolin to make 1 ton of HPA at the right purity. And for work we've done has shown we can probably do it from about 3 tons of our material. So we've got a big advantage there. We spent 3 years working on this without saying very much. Recently we signed up an MOU though with a company that has a plant, an operating plant in Canada. And we have now exclusivity to their technology for Australia and New Zealand. They're working towards building a new plant in the UK, which is being supported by government funding in the UK. We're looking to replicate that in Australia. But also we have engaged a truly world-class team of metallurgists in this space, over 100 years of experience between them. And we're getting a lot of very good, interesting advice, and we're working towards some very interesting optimizations for this whole process. So what's next for us? Next year is going to be a very big year for us. But before then, we will sell out all of the plant, first phase, which is approximately 116,000 tons of product coming out of the plant. As I mentioned before, we could do that right now. We've got people lining up to sign up for that, but we're making sure we choose the right partners and make that as attractive as possible. Because also coming up very rapidly now is our definitive feasibility study, leading to a bankable feasibility study. So those two are well in progress and due for release in the last quarter of this year, which is very close now. And on the back of those, once those are done, we will be able to move forward the debt funding situation very quickly. So we're in a very good position now. We don't need to raise any money for a very long time now, if at all. And once the DFS is finished, that's the final hurdle to getting to the banks for debt funding talks. We are now already in negotiations with several banks around the world on debt funding. And once that DFS is done, then we will find out how much we can get and to finalize our requirements for the mine. The mining approval, again, that's going through the process with the government. It's going very, very successfully. We finished the public consultation phase. We passed that one, and it's been published on the government website. So we're just waiting for our mining conditions to come through now. They should be due, they're due to come through next month. So next month we'll get our mining conditions, which means then we just have to work out the environmental mining plan with them. And that's just a matter of a process that we have to go through. So that's also progressing well. Also on the horizon there, we're looking at the high purity halloysite material. This is what's being dug out of the ground at the moment. We have ways of purifying that. We have a $1 million pilot plant that we can use to process the material to get high purity halloysite. We believe that we can get some very high levels of percentage there. We already have the highest halloysite found in Australia at the moment and in quite large amounts. So that's a project we're working on. We're pushing the concrete product through to commercialization. That's looking very exciting, and at the moment the results are actually exceeding expectations in there, so that's excellent. We have some additional resources to tack on. I mentioned we have over 100 million tons already. We have drilled and tested a lot more material in different resources. We just have to model those when we get time, and we'll add those on. We look at commercializing nanotechnology as quickly as possible, and as probably the carbon capture first, as I mentioned. Also, we've finished our studies into high purity alumina, and we'll make some more, release some more news on that as we move forward. In the background, we have the opportunity for direct shipping ore. So there's such a big shortage of this material in the world, and especially in China, that we have 4 major companies now who want our ore unprocessed. So we just have to work out, first of all, if we want to do that, and if we want to do it, how much money we can make from doing that. And also we have an opportunity to sell our sand. So when we mine the product, and you see on the right-hand side there's a diagram of the mine and how it's going to work when it's actually operating next year. So all we do is we take the material out. It's quite a shallow mine. It's more like a quarry. We just take the sand out in a process plant. So we desand it and put the sand back in the hole. Now that sand is actually a very good quality construction sand. So we may be able to sell that. And it's another opportunity we're looking at the moment. So what are the key takeaways for us? First of all, we have one of the world's largest resources of this type. It's a very high value industrial mineral, much higher value than ordinary kaolin. And it's a low volatility market. This market has been growing year on year very steadily for the last 20, 30 years. The good news is that global demand is continuing that way. It's still growing, but supply is decreasing. And there's a big gap in the actual market now. The biggest mines in the world producing the Halloysite kaolin have recently shut down. So that's why we are getting approached by numerous parties around the world for this material. We've got a very simple business model, with a low impact mining. You saw it's more like a quarry. And on the back of that, we have huge potential in all these new applications. So some exciting stuff coming through there. And finally, the actual CapEx required is low. As I mentioned before, we have a lot of money right now. We don't need to raise any more money, so that's not a concern. And we have a short timeline to operation. So thank you for listening to my presentation. There are some more slides that have been released to the ASX today. So if you want to see some more information about the JORC, our JORC statement, so our JORC tables, they're in there, and also some statements on the statements I've been making during this presentation. So
thanks so much for that, James. Thanks so much. We do have a few questions for you, so we'll get started. A few people have asked questions around timing, so timing of when you're anticipating to break ground in 2022 to start with, and then around the DFS. So could you please provide some more detail as to when you're anticipating to break ground?
Yeah, well, breaking ground first then, that's the first issue. So I've said in previous announcements, we're looking to break ground February next year. The rate determining step for that is the government approval process. Everything else is relatively straightforward. So we're just waiting for as I mentioned before, waiting for our mining conditions to come through, which should come through next month. That means we will get our mining approval. Then we just go work on the environmental closure plan and the mining plan. So that takes a few months. So we're still looking in that time frame. So it's going to be, we're looking at early next year. If the government process goes very smoothly, that's exactly where we'll land. If it takes a little bit longer, then we'll be sort of probably second quarter next year. So it's around about that time. Mm-hmm. In the scheme of things, it's actually very short term now. The other question about the DFS, yes, we had a DFS virtually ready to release based on the ceramic grade. That was all done and dusted, but because we got this new offtake agreement for the paint grade, we realized that we had a higher value material here, which we could make more money from. We did a bit of a pivot there, and we had to incorporate the paint grade into the DFS. So that's caused a delay, but we said that will be released fourth quarter this year, and that is still the plan. It's very, very close to being complete now. So I expect that to be out fairly soon.
Great, thank you. A question around your HRM product. So there are obviously alternative solutions on the market. Wondering here what the comparative benefits of your product are compared to these existing solutions, and how well does HRM add to ready mixed concrete?
So yeah, there are some alternative solutions for rheology modification in concrete. The ones that we've tested against and we in fact come out on top of are extremely expensive, though. You're talking about products here that sell for up to $10,000 a ton. Now, we can match that performance with our material. But those materials, because they're so expensive, they are in a niche area and they're only used when they actually have to be used because they add too much cost to a concrete. So we positioned our HRM to have the same benefits, but to be able to be supplied at a much lower cost, which means it can be used right across the board in all concrete applications. And it can add value to all those applications by, when you change the rheology, you can do things like you can add more coarse material and less fine material, and that means less water and less cement and less chemicals. So there's all sorts of optimizations there you can actually make by getting a much more efficient rheology. So we're working on that now, and we're having a product. Our aim is to get a product that can be used across the board in all concrete without affecting the cost to the concrete producer too much, but give them lots of benefits.
How advanced are your discussions on the commercialization of the concrete product? As someone's asking specifically here, if that market could take all great white production.
So at the moment we're not incorporating that in our DFS. The reason is that there's two things we have to do. We have to get commercial agreements signed up, and we have to get a proper resource on that material. Because the HRM material itself is a bit different to our normal run-of-mine material. It's actually more like our waste material. Because color is not important and some impurities aren't important in the HRM, that material, a lot of it was going on our waste tip. So we're just going back to test those areas to find out how much we have so we can get a JORC resource on that material. But as soon as we have a JORC resource on that material, then I'm confident we'll get this agreement signed up very soon, because there's people chasing pretty hard for that material. And there's a lot of interest now in that sector, because anything that can reduce carbon footprints for materials that involve cement are very exciting. So we can certainly do that, and it's just a matter of getting that resource done now, and we'll get something signed up.
Jumping over to your ceramics product now, so from concrete to ceramics, how much demand today is there in Asia for the ceramics product?
So the demand for that is very strong, because the Halloysite kaolin, which is the unusual material we have, the biggest mine in the world was in China, and the second biggest was there, and they both closed up, no more production. So there's a big demand there, but they've got nothing to process at the moment, nothing to use. So at the moment we've got about 85,000 tons of our initial production signed up, but we've got people chasing far more than the balance we have left, who are actually ready to sign up now. As I mentioned before, though, we want to make sure that we have this de-risked to the maximum level before we actually go into operation. There's no massive demand now to get more offtake signed up right now, because we have enough that secures the business. So that's actually enough to get debt finance from the banks if we want. So what we sign up now is just a bonus to that. It's quite clear that we got demand from not just China, though. China's the biggest consumer by a long way, but we've got this signed up a contract already in Japan. We've got a big demand from indicated from India, Taiwan, Thailand at the moment, and also other countries in that region. So the Asian demand is very strong. So our plan is to go double capacity after year 2. So we'll be looking to sign up double the capacity from year 2 onwards.
And just quickly to wrap up, James, we're jumping back to concrete now, as you've piqued a lot of interest there. Is there capacity to sell pure halloysite straight from the Streaky Bay pilot plant to willing customers?
Well, the good thing about this HRM product is that we could probably sell that as an ore, and it would work well. The only contaminant there, of course, is sand, and sand is a construction sand, so it would work in those applications. So we could potentially just sell that material straight from the ground for $1,000 a ton plus, which would be a fantastic result for us. We could process it though, and just take the sand out. Very, very basic process. So put it through a 0.5 mil screen would be enough, and that would give us a product that would sell for more. So it's the pilot plant at Streaky Bay it's a large. We have a large centrifuge there, which we source from Imerys, which is the biggest kaolin producer in the world. We're aiming to produce 80-90% purity halloysite in that. Now that's going to be going straight to the carbon capture plant for commercialization of that process. But we also have the opportunity then to sell that pure halloysite in its own right. In its own right, it sells for about $5,000 a ton. Now we don't need. There's more than just halloysite for the HRM. Without giving too much away, there are other factors involved to make it HRM. It doesn't need to be pure halloysite. It needs to be something else. But we know exactly what it does need to be. So we don't need that for the. We don't need that piece of equipment for the HRM. We can do that very simply.
Great, thank you. And I have to ask, because we've had a couple of questions about this, is the carbon capture plant in the running for the Elon Musk contest?
Well, let's say it passes all the criteria for that competition. It's not officially entered yet because we wanted to find out. Due to COVID, it was slowed down the actual manufacture of it. But I can say that once it's in and operating, that could well be one of the things we target. Although having said that, we have some very large, interesting companies already who want to get involved in that project. As soon as that's operational and we can show them the demo plant, they're keen to get involved.
Awesome. We might leave it at that for today. Thank you so much for joining us today, James.
Thanks for your time.
Thanks, everyone.